Okay, I'll mention this very, very briefly, seeing as how we've both seen these films. So,
Hmm.
obviously, there are three Hannibal films. There's, of course, Silence of the Lambs. There's the 2001 by Ridley Scott. Can you
I
take a
haven't seen that
gander
one.
as to what I fucking watched?
Um, wasn't there a Brett Ratner one? Isn't that Red Dragon? Or is it Hannibal? Isn't it Brett Ratner? I feel like it's Brett Ratner. Is
No,
it?
but Red Dragon as well. Yes, okay, I will mention Red Dragon. Yes, Red Dragon as
Oh,
well.
okay. What other one
So,
is there?
there is a film called Hannibal Rising. Okay.
Ugh. I'm gonna hate this already, aren't I?
Regan, it has to be said, this has got to be one of the worst films I've ever watched, and I've watched some bad films. This is worse than Halloween 5, and that's saying something, alright?
It's been a bit generous to Halloween 5.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah,
I'm
it's...
guessing. Okay, so I'm guessing if it's Hannibal Rising, I've just smashed everything there. That's fine. Um, professional.
Yeah.
I'm guessing this is a prequel. It sounds like a
Yes.
prequel.
Yes,
Is it still
essentially the
Anthony
story
Hopkins?
of it is of how Hannibal Lecter becomes the way he becomes. So, in this film, it's set during, like, wartime World War Two, and
Right.
his family retreat to, like, this sort of cabin in the woods where it's invaded upon by, like, wannabe SS soldiers for some reason. So anyway, like, they don't find any food, so they decide to scran Hannibal's little sister. And Hannibal, over the years, develops a personal vendetta against them, so it just turns into, like, some revenge film. Like, honestly, it could be, like, it's a hybrid of, like, Rambo and Hannibal. It's the worst thing I've ever watched, and I've watched some bad films. I mean, like, it's not quite Morbius bad, but it's still bad.
I was about to say, because surely this couldn't be like the worst film you've ever seen in your life.
No, that goes to a certain film which will be mentioned next week.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Real Podcasters, where we talk about all things movies, TV shows, video games, and a bunch of other things in no particular order. My name is Regan, and I'm joined once again by my spiffing co-host. It's Dan. Hello,
Spiffing,
Dan.
you say?
Spiffing.
Hello. Hello, audience.
Hello. Hello. First things first, if the audio sounds a bit weird in this one, I totally understand. I finally bothered to upgrade the lav mic. And I'm having to use Audacity because I'm clearly some sort of primary school student. I'm sorry, I barely used Audacity in like school, let alone college. I don't even think we even touched it then.
No, it was you'll use Adobe Audition and you'll like it.
I mean, I used it. I wouldn't say I liked it. I could never wrap my head around it. And I'm not spending another 20 quid a month on top of everything else to use this.
Yeah,
Like, honestly.
I wish they do like a package thing where you can get that and Audition like at a bundled rate, because it would make more sense. Like, surely if you're using like Premiere for like film stuff, surely you're gonna need to do audio stuff alongside it. So why not just bundle the two together? I don't know.
Well, you'd think, wouldn't you? But yes, this week we are talking about Cloverfield, the found footage monster movie from 2008 that is celebrating its 15th birthday this month. In fact, actually, I think when this episode goes out, it's this week. I think it's like Friday or Saturday.
Oh, I'm gonna actually check that.
Yeah, I think it's one of them. Although actually saying that, we're on the 15th, so it might be like the Thursday or the Friday.
I'm not sure about the US release, but this came out on February in the UK, 1st of February.
Huh. Okay, so I must be looking at the American one. This is
Yeah.
already screwed up. We're gonna have to cancel this
This
one.
has
and
been
just
the
do
Real
something else.
Podcasters. We were totally wrong about the release date. We'll see you next week.
Oh, god damn it. Anyway, it's celebrating its anniversary in the next couple of weeks, so why the hell not?
That's more like it.
So yeah,
God
this
damn
is a
it.
film that I've very much really enjoyed from the moment I saw it years ago. I'll be curious to hear Dan's thoughts in a minute. So let's take a look at what makes it work, what doesn't work, and a few things in between. As ever, there's time codes in the description, and do not anticipate this episode being 2 hours long. I'm not planning on doing that for a very long time. At least until next week when we do the 2022 Film Awards, from which case it's going to be very long.
Yeah.
How much you want to bet there's going to be a rant on Halloween Ends? I think there is. Spoilers. Assuming.
We'll have to do like you know that tally thing in the cabin of the woods where like they place bets on what's going to happen. We should just do that.
Oh god, yeah. Mate, I've been doing that like literally for a year now. We've been recording these things for a year. I don't know how that happens. Anyway, rambling. So talking about Cloverfield, I'm curious. So for me, in terms of when I first saw it, I remember getting the DVD for Christmas. You know, back in the day when DVDs were quite desirable.
Yeah.
And now they're just in like the bargain bin in like your WH Smith for like 99p if you're lucky. But I ended up rewatching the film like loads, like way more than even like the likes of Godzilla. For someone who was never a big fan of found footage, this was one of the only occasions I could stomach it. It's a bit like the odd zombie film. Like for the most part, I'm still very hit and miss on it until I get like a good one. It was very much like the American take on Godzilla, complete with its own style and tone, but very recognizable to anyone that had seen a kaiju film. Now, I know you mentioned last week, Dan, when we spoke about the fact we were going to be doing this, I think you said that you had seen it before, but it had been a very long time. So
yes. So, I mean, this is probably going to, like, go on a bit, but I'll try my best to condense it down. So, I watched a part of this. I didn't watch the entire thing. I watched part of it many, many years ago. So, whenever I watched it, I think, like, yesterday, when I, like, actually sat down and watched it.
Right.
And I pretty much just treat it as a first time watch.
That seems fair. Okay. If I guess we'll kick things off with our general thoughts before I delve into like the behind the scenes of the film and some other stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, we'll talk about the monster. There is a monster in this. Spoilers, if you have no brain. You know, as I say, for me, I do very much enjoy the film in terms of the three that we've had. Technically, by default, it's the second best. I do prefer one of the others, which I'll get to in a bit. But I think as like an American version of Godzilla, that's not the American Godzilla from 1998.
No.
Ironically, 10 years prior, and severely lacking in Roland Emmerich. I really like it. I like it a lot. It's definitely got its flaws, but I think for what it is, I think it works really well. Just to be general. I'm now terrified because let's face it, I wouldn't be shocked if this is like another instance where I've tried to pitch a film to you, I've tried to pitch it really well, I've suggested it's actually a really good film, and then you turn around and basically just shoot me in the face with your negative opinion. Bugger. I'm about to be shot, aren't I?
Right. I've watched some pretty bad films in my, film life, right? This isn't one of them.
Oh, thank God.
My rating has now been updated on Letterboxd. Yeah, I really liked it. And again, going into it, like, treating it like a first-time watch, very similar to Godzilla in a respect. Obviously not the 1990s one, because that one just sucked. Really, just sucked.
All of them.
Well, you see, when the stuff with the monster actually appeared, I was like, okay, this is actually quite similar to the 2014 Godzilla that came out. And I really like that film, by the way.
Oh, yeah, I love it.
Really, really good film. Easily, like, the best out of that entire trilogy. Well, is it a trilogy?
4 films, because it's got that Kong Skull Island as well, which was
pretty
crap, to be honest.
Yeah, so
really
the best
like
out of
one.
all that quadrilogy.
Oh, yeah.
I do prefer 10 Cloverfield Lane. But this is really solid, and especially for a film that isn't technically a horror film, it could absolutely be a horror film.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I mean, like, I think in a lot of ways, like, even you have a look at, like, the old school Godzilla film. I'm having to say old school Godzilla film, because speaking to someone who's now seen that entire Showa era, I don't, like, seriously, much like with Terminator, Godzilla shouldn't have been a franchise, frankly. I'm sorry. I love the original, I love the 2014 one, I love Shin Godzilla, and I like a smattering of others, but my God,
I think I've got
kids shouldn't be the focus.
The 1954 one and Shin Godzilla on my watch list. I think I can rent Shin Godzilla. I'm gonna have to like get a hard copy of the 54 version because I just can't find that anywhere.
Expect the Shin Godzilla one to be a little bit boring. I think as a first time watch, it's not the kind of film you'd expect. It kind of demands you to actually pay attention. It's not like a turn your brain off kind of Godzilla film, which is fine. I've got no problem with that. But anyway, yeah, so in terms of the origins of Cloverfield itself, so I labelled it the American Godzilla because that's essentially how it was made.
Yeah.
Because this was produced by J.J. Abrams, one of our favourite producers. He's not. He used to be, after he did some stuff with Star Wars.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah, I'm not going to reference it. It's 2023. We're not talking about Star Wars until next year. And technically in a couple of months with The Mandalorian. But yeah, he'd visited Japan with his son whilst filming his directorial debut, Mission Impossible 3, which is weird to say it, frankly. I can't believe that was his first film.
I literally didn't know that at all. I just thought he was like just director of most of the Star Wars film, well, the later Star Wars films.
Yeah, he did Mission Impossible 3, he did Super 8, he's done Lost, or at least the first season of Lost, Alias, and I think Felicity as well.
Lost?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, he did, I think he left during the first season, and then it just continued on. I never watched Lost, to be honest. I'm never interested.
It's very long.
Well, I figured. They're lost for a very long time.
Yeah.
I'm afraid there's like a purgatory thing. Anyway, rambling again. Oh my god, we're talking about Cloverfield, Dan. Will you stop distracting me?
Field of the Clovers.
Field. Actually, where I work, one of the fields is called Cloverfield. I've never unseen that. I was like, does it have a giant monster in it? And everyone was like, what? I was like, oh my god, you uncultured miscreants. Jesus. So he was shooting Mission Impossible 3 and visiting Japan with his son, and they end up in a little toy shop that naturally, because it's Japan, full of Godzilla toys and memorabilia.
Yeah.
And he wanted to create a more intense, visceral monster movie for a Western audience, because in reality, when you have a think about it, the biggest one you ever had was King Kong. In the 1930s, you had one in the 70s and in the 90s and stuff. But, and they've just come off the back of the 2005 Peter Jackson version of King Kong, a film I absolutely love, but it's a remake, so it's not really its own thing. So as I said, they had King Kong, but not much else to rival the likes of Godzilla. So that's where Cloverfield came in. You've also got the iconic poster of the Statue of Liberty, missing its head a little bit. If you kind of focus on it a lot, you can tell there's no head. That was very much influenced from a poster for Escape from New York, and quite a bit of that film apparently was a direct source of inspiration for the production. Do you know much about the marketing on this?
No, again, like,
beautiful.
Only seeing like part of it many years ago. I've never really like bothered with it up until now.
Well, it's quite fascinating, because the kind of film that it is, you'd assume, okay, you're just going to do some general trailers, put the film out, blah, blah, blah. You wouldn't do much more than that, because it's it's just a sci-fi monster movie. No, actually, they went way overboard with it. Something that very much echoed into 10 Cloverfield Lane and the Cloverfield Paradox. Like, the marketing was extremely unorthodox. The teaser trailer was attached to Transformers back in 2007. And the reaction from people was they preferred the trailer over Transformers. Which makes sense, because it ain't great, to be honest. No one really knew what the film was about, and even like the only trailer that probably got debuted was only like a minute of footage, and I think it was mostly consistent of the house party and a little bit of them running away as the Statue of Liberty's head crashes into the street, and that was about it. You never saw the creature at all. Which I think is fascinating. And in terms of like the rest of the marketing they did, they basically put out these like fake websites and posts and stuff like that for companies that exist in the franchise.
Right.
So we learn more about companies that have been thriving off this underwater nectar that people have been drinking in the slush or drinks. You might have seen a couple of the adverts in places through the film. That directly ties to an oil rig that's attacked by the Cloverfield creature, because that's what wakes it up. And I actually learned this more recently, actually, when I was doing research for us. The little parasite creatures that kind of fall off the clover creature.
Yeah.
The venom that's in like their glands and stuff is actually the same nectar that's in the drinks.
Oh.
So I'm curious as to how that works, because, no offense, I think if people are drinking it and exploding, I don't think it would be very viral, to be honest. I don't think it would be.
I mean,
it's fascinating, really, to be honest, because, I mean, again, it's a film that doesn't
that is really interesting, actually.
But I think the big one, and I'd be surprised if you didn't know about this one. I know we're kind of skipping ahead to the end of the film, but I just want to talk about the marketing a bit. The final shot of the film, where it cuts back to the old video cam footage
tape thing.
Yeah. And they're at the fairground, and the camera focuses on the ocean. If you look in the background, this was a big deal back in 2008, and even when I first saw it, I went nuts. You can see a little dot fall out of the sky and crash into the ocean.
Yes.
And that's a satellite. And that was one of the theories as to what woke the creature to begin with. I never really bought that one because I thought it's a bit too coincidental that two characters would be that close to the creature over the span of 2 months. Then again, I've seen a lot of Godzilla films, and there's a lot of coincidences in that. But yeah, as I say, I mean, like, it's subtle enough that you wouldn't notice it initially, but if you do notice it, and you kind of sat there thinking, no, surely no, I wouldn't have seen that. And that's kind of expanded upon in a little bit in 10 Cloverfield Lane, and then attempted to in Cloverfield Paradox, but I'll talk about those later. One of which I can only talk about because I told you not to watch it. It's obviously not 10 Cloverfield Lane spoilers. But yeah, let's discuss the actual creature. Easily one of the best looking monsters I think I've ever seen in my life. It's like, for sure. It's instantly iconic. Like, and at least they do the whole Jaws and Alien approach. Just keep it in the shadows and obscured by smoke and fire.
They don't just do what, like, I suppose, like a cheesy, like, Godzilla film would do, where they just sort of reveal the creature. I think there was a video I came across, which was, is it Ghidorah, the three-headed dragon-type serpent thing?
Ghidorah, yeah.
Yeah, Ghidorah. There was, like, a video of, like, the behind-the-scenes of this, like, you know, Showa-era one, where they basically take you behind the scenes of how, like, they created the puppet and stuff like that, and they show you bits of the film, and it's like, well, you reveal it straight away, but this, they keep it in the shadows. I mean, sure, you see, like, the creature's, like, legs and stuff like that, but it's not till, like, later you actually see the creature in full. I mean, even with, like, the helicopter shots and stuff, like, creature is kept in the dark. Like, you can see its shadow, and you're like, okay, that's big, but it's never, like, revealed to you until a lot later, so it definitely does that approach with Jaws, like, keeping it just away for a bit.
Yeah, and that's something I really appreciate, because especially for a film with this budget, you can't really sit on the creature for too long.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's going to look a little bit ropey. But I think it works absolutely spot on. Like, you only get like one or two decently clear shots of its face. Then of course you have it at the very end when it's just sort of like spying at the camera, just like, do I eat you? Or do I just pause?
Kind of reminded me of, like, a dog with, like, the way it, like, tilts its head. It's, like, really, like, interesting.
Oh my god, yeah. Suddenly I'm picturing, like, maybe, like, a VFX artist on that film deciding to take, like, the raw footage, take it home and just take the mick and just CGI a dog into it instead, and it's just like a Yorkshire Terrier just running around New York attacking buildings.
You remember
oh my god, I want that.
The film Over the Hedge with the Rottweiler who goes, play? Basically that.
I think I saw that once, but like years ago, and I clearly didn't like it because I've never watched it since.
Yeah, it instantly just reminded me of that. The way, like, it just tilts its head towards the camera. It just popped up in my mind like the little cartoony dog. Play.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of design, I think it's absolutely spot on. Unless you read into all the viral marketing they did for Cloverfield, there isn't much exploration into the origins of the monster. I mean, Robin is made to have their own theories, but it isn't the most pressing matter. Like, the few times you get a good look at the monster, it's absolutely terrific. But let's face it, I mean, it is a pretty scary creature, but it is the little parasites that are just,
That scene in the tunnel, and again, this is why I say, like, it could literally be a horror film, because I just wasn't expecting that at all. That is terrifying. Like, for a film that isn't necessarily counted as a horror film, it doesn't fit in the horror genre for some reason. I mean, who am I to dictate what films are horror and what aren't? It could totally be a horror film. Like, no, I'm not going to go into that. No,
please don't, because no, we're not doing that.
No. Yeah, that scene in where they basically go through they get, well, nearly trodden on by this creature, and they go underground in the subway. Obviously, the city of Manhattan is just in absolute chaos, so, I can't really imagine the trains would be running,
I mean, probably not. I mean, like, I'm not one to assume. I haven't been stuck in the scenario of a giant monster running around the street. I mean, my first thought isn't to go and get the train, weirdly enough. It's like, oh no, it's destroying everything. I'm going to wait for the train. I mean, no offense, we're in the UK. There's a lot of train issues currently. It's the last thing I'd want to do.
Yeah, exactly. You'd just be waiting for like a millennia.
I was just saying, like, the monster's coming towards me. Is the train coming? Oh no, wait, they're striking a bugger. Never mind.
The creature's just like lifting up its arm and just looking at his watch and looking back at you.
It's like, I was waiting for this to be a little bit more dramatic, please.
Yeah, the bit where they basically just switch to, well, I think it's the camera operator who switches like to a night vision setting, and you get like a glimpse of one of the creatures scurrying, and you're like, oh god, what's this?
Yeah. No, they are definitely like the most terrifying bits of the film, I think it's safe to say.
Yeah.
Because where the Clover creature wreaks havoc on the buildings of New York, it's the parasites that inflict the most damage on the people. Though it is actually interesting reading the behind the scenes on it, because it doesn't look like that in reality, in terms of an ecosystem, the parasites and the Clover creature aren't actually connected. Right. In fact, I think one of the theories behind the scenes was that the parasites are the ones that cause the creature to head for New York, because they're just inflicting like so much pain on it. It's just running around trying to get them off.
Okay, that's quite actually, yeah.
I quite like that.
Yeah,
because in reality, because I mean, when you look at it behind the scenes, I mean, the creature's not even fully grown; it's basically a baby. So it's just running around screaming because it doesn't know where the hell it is.
If that's a baby, Jesus, I dread to think what an adult must look like.
I'll get to that.
Oh no.
Okay, we've spoken about the monsters. Let's talk about the humans. This is really the only issue I could really see with the film. I mean, I wouldn't call it even like a 5-star film anyway, because it's not.
Yeah.
But easily the biggest issue one could easily see is with the humans, because they don't really. They just have personality quirks, which is something I'd usually criticize. But I think it's a bit difficult with the found footage film, because whereas with like your typical film, you're not exactly bound by time. Whereas
this kind of film is.
It's like incredibly rapid. It's like, and it's basically just like a fly on the walls like scenario. You're just following these random characters around all the time, and that's how you learn about like who they are. It's just through like their quirks, the way they're talking. So the conventions of a regular screenplay don't really apply here, as I say, because the pace is far more rapid and breakneck compared to others. Like, there's never any downtime.
Yeah.
Like if it was a conventional film, maybe, but in this case, you can't really. I don't think.
No, I mean, if there was time spent in the characters, it would have been truly pointless. Considering what happens to a few of these characters, it just would have been pointless. Like, as you say, it's the same with any other found footage film. Like, it's too busy trying to just. Well, it just goes. Like, it doesn't focus on the characters. It just goes with the story, which is what it is. I mean, Blair Witch, Wreck's a great example, actually. It's really solid. Terrifying film as well.
I mean, yeah, the ending is quite.
Nope.
Nope. But funny enough, actually, I feel like the ending of Wreck, I'm sure I've seen in a film recently, without trying to spoil it. We've both seen it.
There is a remake of Wreck, the American remake, and funny enough, I was speaking about that. It's called Quarantine. It's essentially it's one of the worst, like.
I've seen the poster for that. Yeah, and it's just like the final shot of the film.
The literal spoiler of it. That's why it just sucks, because it actually spoils the goddamn film.
Whereas Cloverfield doesn't have that. It's very clever like that. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like a core relationship that we actually follow, it's very much with Rob and Beth, like trying to rekindle their relationship with one another while the Clover creature is making its way through the city. Again, it's not the most riveting thing on the planet, and quite frankly, TJ Miller's annoying reminder of his existence every single second it grates on you pretty quickly. Sorry, I mean, look, I like the first Deadpool. He's quite funny in that one, but he was also in Deadpool 2 and Transformers 4 and the Emoji Movie.
I mean,
all
as
of which
you
are
say,
terrible.
it's not. Oh god, he was in the Emoji Movie. I haven't seen that. Gee,
Don't. He played Meh.
Meh.
Which is me.
Oh no.
Just Meh.
Like, as you say, like this, the whole character scenario, little love story thing. It's not the most like excitable of plots, but you kind of have to have something in there to fill in, like, you know, as much as I would just pay to see like an hour of a creature just wreaking havoc, you do have to have some human element to it, not like King of the Monsters element where they're just so annoying.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, especially when I've been going through the Godzilla movies of old and looking at the more modern criticism that people have of the Godzilla movies, where they're always like, oh, it doesn't focus on Godzilla, it just focuses on the humans, I'd rather focus on the creature. And I'm sat there thinking, you can't actually do that.
Yeah.
Because it would get boring really, really quickly.
I'm sure it's
what
been
you
done,
actually
like...
want. Well, in short films, you can get them.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose you can get away with it in animation. When it comes to live action, you couldn't. But also because, bar one Godzilla film, Godzilla can't talk. Spoilers, he technically talks at one point with, I believe it's, which one is it? I think it's Anguirus, who's like the giant armadillo one. There's a moment where, in one of the other ones, where they start talking to each other, but it's through speech bubbles.
No.
I kid you not.
No.
I guess because me mate Jordan,
no.
he's a big fan of Godzilla, and I remember sending him that. Just like, so I'm watching this one. I'm going to send you a video. And I think he just lost the plot. He was like, tell me this is like a fan film. Tell me this wasn't like a commercially released version of Godzilla. I'm like, mate, 80% of them are like this, just minus the speech bubbles.
Oh, dear me.
Luckily, the Clover creature doesn't do that in this.
No, thank God.
As funny as that'd be.
Before we go on to what else we're discussing, right? You know who the Clover creature reminds me of?
Is this going to be like an insult to someone that we like?
No.
Oh, okay,
so you
fine.
remember in the 2014 Godzilla with the creature that he goes up against, similar design to that.
Yes, the Mutos.
Yeah, really similar. Like with the I think like the way it walks. I was like, okay, that looks quite similar.
Yeah, because I mean you got the because it's the female one that can't fly.
Yeah.
And it's like that one.
Yeah,
I do really like the design of the Muto.
Yeah.
We will definitely discuss the 2014 Godzilla film probably next year for its 10-year anniversary, because somehow it's
bloody hell.
Yeah.
2014.
But also
2014.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
2014,
I actually saw that in
2021.
cinema, believe it or not.
So did I. I saw it in three. Like honestly, you've never seen so much cheering when it gets to the airport sequence and it roars for the first time, and everyone just went ballistic. I absolutely loved it. But anyway, so in terms of like the big thing that this film has is, of course, it's found footage. It's obviously not the first film to do found footage. Technically, you've got the likes of the Blair Witch Project. Technically, you've got a good half chunk of Cannibal Holocaust that's actually technically a found footage film.
Yeah.
So that's actually I think that's actually the first instance of a film doing that. But because by default the Blair Witch Project's better than Cannibal Holocaust, then that one wins probably. As I say, it's something I'm not very particular on. I'm very, very specific, as I say, much like with zombie films. I rarely see a good use of the format, but I think with Cloverfield it works spot on. Because
Yeah,
I think if you
definitely.
did if you did the film quite conventionally, it would just feel like a Godzilla film. But I think
Yeah.
shifting the format makes it very much its own thing.
I wouldn't believe a lot of it if it was done the way like a previous Godzilla film had been done, like where there's just like cameras set up and stuff like that. I like the fact it's just, okay, here's a camera, we're just gonna use it as like a document of the events happening. It works so well. And I know that a lot of people, don't particularly like found footage for the fact that the camera is like all over the place, but that's the thing with found footage. It's meant to it just acts as like a documentary of the events happening. So you're almost, I think the idea behind it is that you sort of take on the POV of this character in a way.
Yeah, it very much gives you like the human perspective, which is something I really liked with the 2014 Godzilla as well, is that it kept, like, while it wasn't found footage, you look at the camera work and the cinematography, it feels very documentary-esque deliberately. Same with Rogue One. That's very much like a Gareth Edwards thing, because he did it with his debut film Monsters.
Yeah.
Where it's all photographed as if it's from a human perspective to show you the scale. And that very much works here as well. Beyond like the one time that they're in the helicopter towards the end and you see it from like up above, and yet it still feels so real because it's just from a perspective that
I
we can
love
just
that
relate
helicopter
to
shot.
immediately.
I really do. I think that's a great shot.
Oh yeah,
because you've just got this like little bit of hope that they're gonna get out. No, because
well,
of
no, here's
course
the
not.
thing. Well, they were always going to have to get nuked, literally, because this is, at least I think it's nuked. Though I do wonder how much battery the camcorder actually has in this.
Yeah, I
got
really
a lot.
wonder. Like that thing must. I mean, surely Rob must have just got a few batteries from Hood. After he was nommed.
Hood. Honestly. Though I think when people do question if the creature actually survives, it actually does, because you hear it. Obviously, I wouldn't have expected you to like watch the entirety of the credits. But towards the end, you hear someone like in like a harsh whisper. I think it's actually the director Matt Reeves, who, as we know, goes on to direct the Batman.
Yes,
that's nuts. You hear someone saying "help us," but then if you reverse the audio, it says it's still alive.
Oh.
Again, just little bits where I'm like, you didn't have to do that, quite frankly, because this film never really deserves that level of care and attention to detail, but it gets it, so it gets extra points from me, because
definitely,
it's clearly not a quick cash grab. And yeah, spoilers, everyone dies, probably. I feel like we'll never know. Well, saying that, now, technically I was going to give some quick thoughts on 10 Cloverfield Lane. I guess some from you, because I wasn't sure if you'd seen 10 Cloverfield Lane and the Cloverfield Paradox. I'm actually going to reference first a 2019 fan film.
Is this the Cloverfield Files?
Yes. I watched that a couple of days ago. I didn't even know it existed until it said that the actor who plays Rob appears in the short film. So it's a 13-minute Brazilian short film. It doesn't really connect too much to Cloverfield until you realise that the footage that we're watching is, again, because it's from a found footage perspective, of this kid who's got some sort of connection with one of the companies, Tag Ruoto, I think that's how you pronounce it, the big company that's basically caused all of the issues in the Cloverfield franchise. Yeah. They're the ones that have the oil rig there. It's their satellite that crashes into the ocean. And at the very end, as all this stuff is going on, all the footage gets wiped, and then it cuts to a webcam footage of Rob, who has very much survived and is now the president of Tag Ruoto, because that's why they were having the house party, because he's leaving to be the vice president for that. And that does confirm that he survives. And I remember watching that thinking, again, this is a franchise that doesn't need that level of Easter egg, but I think that's really cool.
No, that is good. That is quite good, and I'm pleased that it's not like a feature film of basically Rob just surviving. I'm pleased that it was just done as a fan thing.
He's not the kind of character that needs to. Yeah, definitely. Obviously, in terms of the sequels, obviously the first one we got, Blood Relative sequel is what it's referred to as, with 10 Cloverfield Lane. I can still remember when that first trailer dropped, completely out of nowhere. No one knew it was happening. Then it was like, oh yeah, it's coming out in 2 months. And you're like, what the hell is this? And you just gotta love the transition to the title as Cloverfield and then 10 Cloverfield Lane. Like, even at that point I was like, oh, you're very clever.
Yeah, I like that. I did like that.
But what were your thoughts on 10 Cloverfield Lane?
I mean, full context, I didn't see it in cinema. I like it better than Cloverfield as a whole, because this is a film that is counted as a horror film for what basically goes on in the film.
Yeah.
I mean, I give it, I think it's a 4 out of 5, maybe 4.5 out of 5. It might even be 5 out of 5, to be honest, because I really like it. I mean, there's so much to unpack in a film that only has like 3 characters in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so enjoyable. It's really like quite on the edge of your seat kind of thing, especially when you watch it for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And you almost sympathize. Well, I mean, surely we'll get into more detail about it, but you almost sympathize with like the guy behind the whole like bunker and stuff like that, and then he just basically loses the plot.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of my thoughts on the film, I mean, I remember actually when I did a screenwriting course with I think it was the University of London. I think it was beginning of last year or the year before. And for the last seminar that we did, we had to, because we review a film each week. For that final one, we got to pick one. I picked 10 Cloverfield Lane because it's one of the best films I think I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
I think I actually labeled it as maybe the best film of the 2010s, which is, it's a mighty thing to say, frankly. Again, for a film that didn't need to be as good as it is, but I've got absolutely no issues with it. I absolutely adore it. I think it's 3 characters stuck in a bunker, and it never lets up for a second. You're never bored. You're constantly like on like a knife's edge as opposed to what's going to happen. Even if you've seen it a few times, like myself. I think one of the reasons why I love it so much is because realistically, Cloverfield doesn't really have much of a connection to it. Mm-hmm. Not really, beyond the title and
beyond the sort of title and like the end of the world kind of thing, but that's about it.
I mean, there are a few connections. Namely, we know that John Goodman's character works for Tag Ruoto. Specifically, because I think he even says it at some point, he works with satellites. Nice little callback to the satellite that crashes in Cloverfield. Probably John Goodman going, I'm
like darts.
Sack now, never mind. But obviously there's no aliens in the first film, so it's a question of what this thing is. Okay. I'm going to quickly talk about the Cloverfield paradox. I'm probably never going to review this because I've only seen it once and I've had to never watch it again. Despite its so this one is set in 2028 on a space station called Cloverfield. Funny enough, actually, I'll mention this one because I didn't mention it before. Both this film and 10 Cloverfield Lane was never meant to be a Cloverfield film. 10 Cloverfield Lane was shot under the title of The Cellar. It was during production that J.J. Abrams decided we could inject a bit of Cloverfield into it, and you sat there thinking, yeah. Okay. Same with this film. It was known as God Particle. And basically this crew on the space station are trying to use the super collider to create unlimited energy for the planet. We've heard that sort of rubbish before.
Yes, 100 times.
They fire it. It goes badly, and they end up in an alternate universe on a different version, orbiting Earth, and things start going completely nuts.
Yeah.
So the Clover creature does actually appear in this.
Right. Why have I got a feeling that this is going to be like
completely messy?
Oh God, really?
And not just because it's causing destruction. No, like it makes. Technically, you've got 2 instances of the creature here, and one very much obscured by smoke and fire. Like it's literally just like the silhouette. Mm-hmm. And then the very last shot is of 2 of the astronauts getting back to Earth in a little craft pod thing.
Yeah,
which looks suspiciously like a satellite coming through the clouds, and then just before it cuts to black, a massive version of the Clover creature just pops up and starts roaring at the camera, and then cut to black.
Oh.
So when you with right, I'm gonna give the film credit. I think the marketing was genius. Mm-hmm. In fact, when the trailer dropped, it again came completely out of nowhere. I think it was about halfway through the Super Bowl at the beginning of 2018, and then said at the very end, debuting tonight on Netflix after the Super Bowl. And you just sat there thinking, we're not giving you any time to process this. You are just going to watch it in a couple of hours. I think I actually stayed up deliberately to watch it on Netflix because it debuted around the same time, and I was like, "This is the only time I'm going to stay up at midnight, even though I'm going to be at work the next day. I'm just going to just like screw it. I'm going to watch this." And I wish I just went to sleep. Look, just I like the attempts of trying to connect these films together, because realistically, you look at them just like sort of their own thing, and they don't really connect.
Yeah,
not really.
I mean,
beyond
like,
that one company.
they've got bits and pieces. I mean, as you say, with like Cloverfield and 10 Cloverfield Lane, like, it's not blatantly obvious they're connected. It's just like subtle little hints to say, "Oh, okay." You know, like John Goodman's character obviously used to work for the company with the satellite, depending if you believe that theory, etc., etc.
Yeah. And towards the beginning of the film, one of the more obvious reshoots to connect it to Cloverfield with Paradox, Donald Logue appears as this like crazy conspiracy theorist on the news, and his surname is the same as John Goodman's character. That being said, that's not them saying that they're brothers or anything, because this is a different universe. So I think the way that I look at it, even though it doesn't really make any sense, Cloverfield Paradox is the main universe, the fire off the super collider, and then it starts sending out crazy stuff both in the future, in the present, and in the past. And that's how we get the Clover creature in 2008. That's why you get the alien invasion in 2016, and that's why you get all the stuff going on now. That being said, I'm having a reach for that because it still doesn't really explain it, because even though the logline of the film, if you have a look at the trail on YouTube, I think the logline is something along the lines of 10 years ago, something happened. Now you will learn why. No, you don't. It just gives you a load more questions. And as I say, spoilers: the Clover creature is in it. Makes absolutely zero sense. It's not the main baddie of the thing. Again, I've seen others try to explain it away, but it just doesn't work, because I think when you have to reach to find an answer, you've failed as a screenwriter, frankly. I mean, it's clear it's like a multiverse kind of thing before multiverse.
Yeah, I was about to say, it sounds very like multiverse.
Thanks, Marvel and Disney. My God.
When did this come out?
2018.
2018. Right.
So 5 years ago, actually. Now I'm saying it's 5 years old in a couple of weeks. Actually, I think it was the beginning of February. I think it was. I'm just sat there thinking, why though? Just why?
Why?
As I say, I only watched it once. I did just watch the ending briefly on YouTube a couple of days ago just to see the monster again. I was like, is this still as weird as it is? Yes, it is. It's completely ridiculous. Obviously, I don't recommend it. Though it is interesting that Overlord, I think that came out later on in the year, the weird Nazi zombie thing, that was believed to be Cloverfield 4. Which, again, I don't think it would have hurt the film, but it also wouldn't have saved us either. I mean, even I thought Overlord wasn't that good anyway. I think it was a bit of a disappointing one.
I mean, if Cloverfield had any sort of connection to Nazi zombies with magic tar, I'd be seriously concerned.
Well, that's the thing, because I think the way they look at it is that, again, the collider goes off and then it just creates just chaos in like different dimensions. But then I'm sat there thinking, then why does it have to be a Cloverfield film to make it feel warranted?
Yeah, I mean, it's like saying like everything like Alien, like it's like, oh, it's Cloverfield. Oh, that's why.
Oh, because heaven forbid it be something else.
Yeah, like, you know.
Yeah. You know what it is, actually? I mean, talking about the sequels to Cloverfield, I haven't spoken about the one that could have been, that never actually happened. It was pitched by Matt Reeves very soon after the film released. So you have that scene on the Brooklyn Bridge when everyone's trying to escape, and like Hood is like recording everything. You see one of the ships in the distance capsized. You see the tag logo on it, the big red one. And then he pans back and you see briefly for a second someone else recording something with a camera, and they lock lenses just very, very briefly. Matt Reeves pitched the idea of doing a sequel with that character, where you could do another found footage Cloverfield film, but technically it would be different because it would be from a completely different
I quite like that idea, actually.
Perspective, because I do really like it, because you could connect it in places. I mean, it would be a nightmare to try and shoot, frankly.
Oh, for sure.
Quite frankly. But I think that would have been a really cool idea, because everyone's going through different things during this Invasion.
Yeah, I mean,
think
considering
it would be
the
funny.
rapid pacing, like every character within the Cloverfield film obviously has their own feelings to it. I mean, Rob just wants to get to Beth. That's his goal throughout the thing. He just wants to get back his girl.
He's got to go and get the girl.
Yeah, poor Jason.
Very 2008.
Poor bleeding
Oh,
Jason.
Jason's dead in minutes. I actually think it would be quite funny if there was a comedy short version of Cloverfield where it's from the perspective of someone who just immediately gets in the car and leaves. That's it.
To just take the subway out of Manhattan.
Yeah. And he just looks in the background with the camera and you could just see everything just like exploding and everything. And he's like, it's like, well, I'm glad I wasn't in that at all.
Boy,
That
I'm
was
sure
clever,
glad
wasn't
that
I,
work
guys?
retreat's over. Yeah, I do like the idea of that. I mean, it's, as you say, it would be an absolute nightmare to shoot, though. Like, can you imagine the difficulty? But again, like, it would be very different in terms of story. I mean, like, surely, like, yeah, they're going through panic and stuff like that, but that character has its own goals, he or she's goals, compared to Jason, Rob, and Beth, and whoever else.
Oh yeah, the other ones. But yeah, I mean, I guess we can just move on to final thoughts. Really, going back to the actual film we're discussing, not the sequels and the thing we never got and the thing we shouldn't have got. Looking at you, bloody Cloverfield paradox. My God. Can you tell I don't like that one? Again, it's not even like the worst film I've seen in my life, but just on principle of it failing to do its own goddamn job.
Like, you haven't sold it to me, but I feel like I have to watch it just to see it, you know what I mean?
Well, it's on Netflix, so you can watch it for free.
I know it's on Netflix, so...
I mean, not for free, but you know. Okay, so in terms of final thoughts, Dan, your final thoughts on Cloverfield. Just the film, you don't need to talk about the sequels now, it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'll briefly say it, like, I obviously seen 10 Cloverfield Lane before this, well, on a technicality of the fact that I didn't see Cloverfield all the way through.
Yeah.
However, this is basically just American Godzilla in ways. Creature design, similar sort of chaos, you know. First 10 minutes or something of the film, it's just with human characters at a party and everything just goes absolutely up in the air. It's like there's a few explosions and then everything just goes amok. There's a creature roaring. You're like, that's what's happening.
That's
very, very solid monster film. One of the best that I've seen for certain.
Yeah, definitely. I think in terms of like an American's take on a kaiju film, I think it works very, very well. And, you know, not to use it as like a reference, but if I own it in 4K, it's clearly going to be something that I'm quite... Well,
something that you treasure, clearly. Something that you can easily go back to and watch.
I say that. I've got Wonder Woman 1984 in 4K as well, and that's a garbage film.
Why have you got that in 4K?
Well, you know what it is? Because I quite like the first one. I thought, you know what? It's got to be at least on par.
No.
And I own that in 4K. No, was I wrong? Whoops.
No. I mean,
again, that isn't a hot take. I don't think there's many people
I think
that like
the
that
majority
one.
of the world just knows that Wonder Woman 1984 is pretty naff.
Yeah, just a wee bit.
Just a wee bit.
Yeah, just a wee bit. But yeah, Cloverfield, I think, works on so many levels. And first of all, happy birthday as well. Happy 15th anniversary. So, I mean, it's 15 years, and you wouldn't really be able to tell, really. I think that's quite telling of the way it's made.
When you see a film from a decade and you're like, oh yeah, that's like a very 70s film, or that's like a very 90s film. You can't really say it's like a 2008 film because it still holds up super well.
Yeah, I definitely. And good on Matt Reeves as well, because he just like shot like in terms of directory, then went on to do the American remake of Let the Right One In with Let Me In, which is nuts. Absolutely adore that film as well. I do plan on seeing the Let the Right One In series on Paramount Plus. Apparently it's really good. And then of course did Dawn and War for the Planet of the Apes, and then and then the Batman, which may or may not get a mention next week.
I'm not saying anything.
I'm not saying anything either, even though I just did. But I'm leaving
okay. Silence. Silence.
Let's just say that even though I'm looking at the runtime in this one, this is a nice runtime for an episode. This is not going to be the runtime of next week's at all.
No, I think next week's episode is going to be like maybe 10-15 minutes, slightly over, if not like 30, depending.
Well, let's just say I planned more than I did the first time we did the Film Awards thing last year. And I promise it won't cut off before the end. And I have a title for the podcast before then.
Where credit is due, it was your first time podcasting, right? And I just came in with just not knowing what the hell to do.
Yeah, and you picked your favourite performances in
shut up.
Inglourious Basterds.
Shut up.
I love that, man. Honestly, it was great. It was so funny. I really liked it. It was just so off the cuff. I wasn't expecting it. It was great.
Like when you just have a brain fart and you're just like, why the hell did I say that?
Or maybe that's actually going to be your like running thing for the Film Awards thing. You're just going to pick a Tarantino film,
so Dan,
irrespective of when it came out.
This is the 2022 Film Awards, not 2018, not 2016, 2022. Don't worry, I have my bit of paper with it all on, so it's fine. I did my homework.
I mean, you also had that last time, and look where we end up. But anyway,
shut up.
But yes, that has been our discussion on Cloverfield. Nice and concise for once. Yeah, I do plan on trying to do episodes that are, an hour or less. This is already less than an hour, so that's pretty spot on. Plus, it's only one film we're talking about. This isn't like levels of Doctor Who where you're talking about like upwards of 14 episodes of series. Don't worry. Next time we do like a series review, it's not going to be episode by episode. I'm not doing that anymore. It was just nice to do that with Doctor Who because my god, did I want to talk about Doctor Who on the internet.
Yes, we did,
as it turns out. But yes, thank you very much for listening. As I say, hopefully the audio sounds alright. I'm going to be checking the audio very, very soon. I just really hope it's nicer than like the echoey lav mic, which is still annoying considering that you still have by default better audio than me because your room is better designed for podcasting than mine.
Do you know what it is?
I hate that.
I just blame my obsessiveness with horror, like all my collectibles and stuff, they just insulate everything.
Yeah, I'd agree on that one, frankly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I really would agree.
It's the a mountain of framed posters, the masks, the books, the vinyl, the ever growing vinyl. It's just everything.
It's just nuts. It's actually annoying, frankly.
That's why he got them, like he was sick of me having the good quality.
I'm always sick of you having the good quality, I swear to God. It was the only reason I got the lav mic to begin with. And then look what happened.
But you know what it is? The funny thing is, though, I didn't have the lav mic before. It was just when we were doing it through the phone recordings.
Yeah, you did. And you have literally the exact same phone as me, basically. Anyway,
except yours has the word pro in it.
Mine... Oh, yes, the phone. Yeah, it does. It's pro-ish. Anyway, yes, so that's been us talking about Cloverfield this week. As said before, next week is what was supposed to be the first episode of 2022, but, the broadband doesn't like me. We will be doing the 2022 Film Awards. We can revisit our hot takes from the last year.
I've got one. I've got a couple.
I've got like 3, at least.
Hold on. Yeah, I've got 2.
You've got 2.
One's not technically a hot take, but for some people it is. But anyway.
I'm curious as to how many times Halloween ends up on that list.
I'm not saying anything. It may or may not be abbreviated to HE. By David Gordon Green.
And the previous one was Hook. In the 90s it was Her. Anyway, yes, thank you very much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next week. But until then, it's goodbye from Dan.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.